The headline is Doppelgangers may share DNA as well as looks. Two unrelated individuals who look almost exactly the same may have more in common with one another than previously thought. A doppelganger is essentially a person who happens to look almost identical to another person despite neither of them being directly related. Such a coincidence can be quite striking. But now a new study has revealed that people who look like one another may also happen to share genetic and lifestyle traits as well. Joe, have you ever run into anybody who says, "Hey, I just saw you over there," or "I ran into somebody who looks exactly like you"?
You know, I have had this happen with somebody we went to school with, actually. And they're like, "Oh, you look just like this person I work with." And then I think I saw a picture. He showed me a picture of him, and I was kind of offended. It's like,
I mean, look at that face.
I don't know, man. Maybe I am that. I don't know. It depends on the day, I suppose, and how much I've been drinking. I've been so drunk sometimes Face ID don't recognize me. But there has been. I remember I was at a hotel, one of the Airbnbs I was staying at. It was a hotel, actually, but they had converted it because of COVID to Airbnb. And I was getting back on my feet from the whole Mexico shit. And there was this lady, and she looked just like a friend of mine who lives in Austin, just like from style, which is very elaborate, like it's super unique. And it's making me think of what you're saying, is that if you're in like certain kind of look category, maybe you end up in this position where you make those same similar decisions. But I swear to God, I went up to her and I was like, "Kristen, how's it go? What are you doing here?" And it was totally not her. She had the same voice too, same voice and everything. It was nuts.
I've done that. I've seen people that I thought I could swear it was a person that I knew, and it turned out not to be them. I've had people tell me, "Hey, I saw your doppelganger somewhere." It does happen. It is kind of a rare occurrence, but it does happen. Well, scientists assess this, and they assess the likeness of two different people. The team used computer software to analyze the images and found that roughly half of those photographed were so similar that they were deemed twin-like. The scientists then conducted a DNA analysis of the pairs and discovered that they shared many genetic similarities, in addition to sharing many other lifestyle characteristics. I wonder what that means, lifestyle characteristics.
Right, they drink at the same bars, or the same kinds of drinks. They order the same kinds of foods. This is what I'm talking about. I don't know how this girl had the exact same style. It was like she literally raided my other friend's my friend's closet.
Yeah. I mean, maybe gym habits, eating habits, all those kind of things. Sexual preference, possibly. The reason for this, the scientists believe, is that given the number of people alive today, it is not unreasonable to expect some genetic overlap of individuals, even if it's by pure luck. And it goes on to say, because the human population is now 7.9 billion, these look-alike repetitions are increasingly likely to occur, they say. And so there's a lot of doppelgangers out there just by chance. But when I saw this article, it's like, oh, this got me thinking back to a story we read about recently, missing 411 in Mount Shasta, where there was a kid who was out hiking. He was out camping with his family. He was kind of lost, and then he ran into what appeared to be his grandma in the woods. And so his grandma said, "Hey, come with me. I'm going to take you to this cave." And so this kid went with what he thought was his grandma to a cave. And in the cave, the grandma asked him to drop his pants and take a crap or a dump on a piece of plastic. The kid decided he just couldn't do that. Probably some performance anxiety, as we would all get. And he's kind of taken aback because I don't think his grandmother ever asked him to do that before. So he's like, I don't know, this is kind of weird. But as he looked at his grandmother, he realized that there's something off about this. And the whole situation in this cave seemed quite bizarre. And the next thing he remembers is waking up. And of course, his family didn't initially believe him. But his grandmother did recount later that when she was sleeping in the woods, she did feel like some pricks on her neck, and there was a mark there. And one night she woke up outside of her tent and her sleeping bag, as if, if we're talking about crazy stuff, she was abducted, her DNA was taken, and they made a clone of her, and that clone was the one insisting that that young child take a crap or a dump on a piece of paper. And so I got thinking about that. It's like, okay, there could be some other, beyond the randomness of doppelgangers out there, just by sheer chance of DNA, there might be some other stories. And so I dug into it, and yeah, it's a big thing in the UFO phenomenon. A lot of accounts of people running into their clone or their replica, and having to negotiate that, or people running into a loved one who is no longer acting the way that they should be. And one of these is a person named Gloria. Gloria was having various UFO abduction experiences throughout a good chunk of her life. She was taken aboard a craft and given an alien implant. Now, her husband was very supportive of her and her claims. Very supportive.
Throughout all these mystifying experiences, Gloria's husband, Fred, was her most loyal supporter.
So Fred was a very big supporter of Gloria, believing all of her accounts and encounters and just being there for her. But things kind of got flipped on their head. So there was a time where Gloria was interacting with her husband, Fred, and he no longer seemed to be the same person that she was used to. He seemed to change, his attitude changed, and he was in general a miserable person.
Almost overnight, her husband, Fred, turned into a different man.
Something is wrong with you. I've been trying to communicate with you for days. Why won't you talk to me? Yes, there is something wrong with you.
His personality, everything just completely changed for the worst. Verbally, sometimes he'd try to shake me or try to hit. His whole personality changed.
Did she say verbally?
What did she say? Verbally or verbally?
He tried to shake me? What is that?
Okay.
That's what I thought
changed.
I heard.
She had no idea.
I'm rewind. I got to know now.
He'd try to shake me or try to hit. His whole personality changed.
She had no idea at the time. Her husband was also an abductee, and the aliens had their own plans for Fred.
There's people who've reported seeing their cloned bodies and then being offered the opportunity to work for the alien.
Could there be some sort of cloning involved here?
Yes, absolutely.
Sounds like it.
And so something happened to his clone. So this is the follow-up to that. So Fred, the clone Fred, is belligerent, pretty nasty, and overall just not a good person to be around. In fact, I would say an inferior clone, because if you're trying to replace somebody for whatever reason, you'd figure you would want like a one-for-one copy, not just like the appearance, but they got to acclimate to all the situations. And Fred is failing clone Fred is failing on all fronts. And so here's how this wound up.
One particular night, he lost his way home. He couldn't find where he lived.
Oh, you're home. Thank goodness. I was so worried.
9:30 comes around. He comes in, and he had this very frightening look on his face.
I got lost. I couldn't find my way home.
Gloria was becoming afraid of the Fred she no longer knew. A few hours later, Fred was dying.
And Fred died right there.
Fuck him.
So clone Fred died. He died pretty quickly after assuming original OG Fred's life. He couldn't get along. He died. But Gloria did go on to say that she did wind up seeing her OG husband on an alien craft at a much later date. And she stated that, hey, Fred told me that I'm working with the aliens. Sorry about that whole mess I put you through, but I decided to stay here and work my aliens because my life is better here than there with you, essentially. I'm assuming that's what he said because he gave up his life with his wife and his family and said, no, this is boring and stupid and there's nothing good on TV. I'm going to go work with the aliens. So I looked to see if there were any other cloning stories out there or replica stories to get maybe a deeper understanding of what might be going on if we're just going along with this route. That there are clones and replicas out there. Some of them are produced by, you can call it alien or ultra-terrestrial. I don't know what it is yet because some of them, I think they're lying to the abductees for their own purposes. Like the story I talked about, the missing 411 one with the kid, grandma in a cave, that seems pretty malicious and it doesn't seem like a very friendly interaction. There was no request for help or anything like that. It seemed like we're going to take your crap and your DNA and then we'll be done with you. So there seems to be a couple different groups that are behind this cloning operation. And I got this story here from Brazil. This is from February 28th, 1974 in Brazil. And this is probably the best account that I could find where it's almost like a behind the scenes of what at least one of these groups is doing with these replicas, these doubles. So Durant, this guy's name is Durant, he was hanging out in his kitchen when all of a sudden he found himself somewhere else with no doors or windows. So he was in a room and it was kind of like just a box in the room. All he heard when he was in this room, that he just basically got teleported there, he just heard this voice that said, "Keep calm, we're your friends." And he did say, like, they did say the word "keep calm" like very loudly, like "keep calm," like why, relax. And so he's like, okay. He chilled out for a little bit. He just kind of sat in this room by himself. And then one of the blank walls, a door formed, and then all of a sudden the door came apart, and this egg-shaped machine, about the size of a human, kind of lurches towards him. And so Durant's just sitting there watching this egg-shaped machine come towards him, and then all of a sudden, out steps a double of himself from this egg-shaped machine.
Mm-hmm.
And so he sees basically himself step out of this egg,
of course he does.
And he's like, okay, what's going on here? His double smiles at him, pats him on his back, and says, "Keep calm, wish me a good journey, for I do not intend any harm on anybody." And the voice just so happens to sound exactly like Durant's. So Durant's like, okay, geez, what the hell's going on here? Then he watches his double go through like this TV kind of screen. That's the best way you can describe it in 1974. So he goes through like this TV kind of screen and winds up in his own kitchen, the very kitchen that he was teleported out of. And he's like, he sees him like kind of walking around. He's kind of got like almost like a bird's eye view of his double as he interacts with people. And he watches his double interact with his own family, his sister and other members of his family. And he notices that his double interacts in a very gruff and rude way with all of his family members, being very dismissive, being very curt. It's almost as if his double has no idea of how social interactions work at all. So he's watching this go on and on and on. And then the voice in the room asked Durant, "Hey, why don't you assist your replica self over there? Maybe give him some pointers, help him out, help him become a better human when he's there. It'll go a long ways to helping us out here." So Durant sits behind the controls of that TV screen and tries to give him some advice on how to be more human, but it doesn't seem to work very well. His double has no concept of commerce, money, interacting with people. He is totally indifferent to human life. He seems much more interested in plants and trees, as he is constantly going over and trying to mend broken flowers or plants that have been trampled upon. And so he's just kind of like, I don't know what to do here. So Durant is basically stuck in this room for about 23 hours. During that time, he experiences no hunger pains. He experiences like no normal urges. He doesn't have to go pee or poop, anything like that. He feels kind of normal. He does feel boredom at times, and because his double is really not paying attention to much of his life advice down there. And so as he like is experiencing boredom, he thinks, I wish I had a book to read. And then boom, he has a book to read. He's like, oh, I wish I had a comic book to read. And then boom, a comic book, the brand new Spider-Man comic edition comes out. And he says it's a comic that has yet to be released down on Earth. So he's getting advanced copies of Spider-Man comics.
So he's got all the tranny Spider-Man ones.
Yes, he's got all the latest and greatest Spider-Man that have yet to be released. And so eventually, right around the 24, 30-hour mark, he gets teleported back to his house. And he's like, okay, what the heck's going on here? But he's left with this memory that he had an interaction with his captors. And the abductors gave him a chance to ask some questions. And this is what Durant said. Durant asked, what do you want with me? They reply, we need to conduct some tests. We do not mean any harm to you or anybody else. The less that you say about this, the better. However, we feel to make it known to all that we are friendly and only wish to help. Question, what are you and what is your world like? Answer, we can't tell you who we are or where our world is. It's very different from yours. Are you asking me to help? And how can I do so when you're invading our world? No, we're not invaders. We work for the good of the human race itself. What made you choose me? You are different from the others. You have feelings similar to our own. How will you nourish me? How shall I get food? You're not going to feel any hunger here. Not on this ship, at least. Do you know about God? The existence of? Clearly so, of course. He is everywhere. Everyone knows him. Why has my watch stopped working? On this ship, it will not work, meaning they're probably in some sort of time portal or time bubble. Question, what or who is the other who replaced me? Answer, he is an image that can be touched. Inside him, there is one of ourselves and a recording of your mind. And then he was basically given the old farewell, go back down to Earth, and we'll talk to you again at a later date. So according to this account from Durant from Brazil, these aliens are producing replicas as some sort of scouting mission to become better humans to help us in the long run, whatever that means. And that their replicas are just maybe a holographic image, some sort of projection. While they feel real, they're not actually real. And actually, Durant even went on to say that his double was freaking out his coworkers when he went to his job because he would just appear places, like he was going through walls. He was like dematerializing, walking through walls, walking up behind his coworkers and freaking them out by scaring them.
What else would you do?
I mean, that's the best kind of prank. You know, if there's only one door in the room and you come behind somebody, boom, got ya. I mean, it's fun.
Take that.
There are accounts of other doppelgangers and clones, one of which is from Spain, where this guy recounts that he had missing time. He got hypnotically regressed, and he recalls being taken to a cave near ancient megalith in Spain. And in that cave, he was approached by about 3 entities with horrible-looking faces, slimy, and they demanded his DNA to be replicated. They wanted his DNA so they can create a replication of him. They wanted to create a clone of him. He was basically subdued, knocked out. They forcibly took his blood. They took his clone. They took his blood to make a clone. They did make his clone, and they made that clone within a 24-hour period. they put this clone and the original human back in the guy's car, and the clone said, "Hey, could you drop me off from Barcelona?" And so he did it. He dropped this double off in Barcelona, and he went home. His family gave him hell because he didn't come home for like 36 hours. And then over the course of the next few weeks, his neighbors kept saying, "Hey, I saw you in Barcelona. I ran into you, but you kind of ignored me," and all that kind of like weird interaction stuff. But there are just a lot of these weird accounts of clones, replicas, and doppelgangers out there, normally happening through sheer coincidence and sheer volume of people on this earth, and then ones that are taking place in the UFO realm. Just strange things. I guess some good. They claim to be good. Some bad. But I don't know if you can believe, like, if this is happening, and I do think it could be.
Do you really?
Yes. I mean, sure. Why not?
Okay.
Why would you believe your captors if you're being abducted, and they're telling you everything we're doing for you and doing to you is for your own good and for the good of mankind? But we couldn't ask your permission. We just had to abduct you in the middle of the night and jab you with needles. Would you really believe them? What kind of trust does that build between people?
That's Fauci. I don't know.
I agree. I'm with you there. There's really no consent in any of the cloning stories that I read. It seemed to be very forcible and very out of the blue. So, I do have like another clone. I'm not going to go into it, but there was a study that it was in Psychology Today about what it's like for twins who get split up at birth. And it was like some kind of government program where I think in the 60s, they took a pair of twins that were up.
You might as well do it. This sounds more interesting and believable.
Well, hey, everything's believable in this world, Joe. Just
Sure.
what we're living in.
You say so.
It is. But this comes from the BBC. If you believe the BBC, Joe. Okay. I'll bring this one up on the screen. I'm telling you, the doppelgangers are here. The identical twins who discovered their secret sibling. This is a very long story, but I'll try to read a little bit from it. A New York adoption agency deliberately split up infant twins in the 1960s as part of a controversial study. Melissa Haugenboom tracks down some of those involved to find out
What's that name?
Haugenboom.
God damn. How do you get through life with a name like that?
I don't know. I mean, could I be adopted by a different parent with a better name?
Maybe. I hope so.
I don't want to be a Haugenboom.
You know how most names are derivative? You know, like Wagner is like based on Wagoner. Smith, you know, being like a blacksmith. What the fuck is a Haugenboom?
I'd rather have that name. That one. That's a better name.
That's pretty good.
But Melissa Haugenboom tracks down some of those involved to find out why they are still searching for answers about this intrusive experiment. Yes, of course. Kathy Schecker was 16 years old when she made the unexpected discovery that changed her life completely. She had an identical twin sister. It was the 4th of September, 1977. She recalls with the utmost clarity, her voice wobbling only slightly when a friend told her that she resembles a girl she knew called Lori Pritztel. Horrible names. Can't you have like something like Smith or what? That would work too. Scheckler's birthday was on the same date as Haugenboom, and the two girls looked exactly the same. Scheckler had known she was adopted since a very young age, enjoying a happy and loved upbringing, but she then learned that the Pritzlers also had been adopted from the same agency as hers. The girls immediately spoke on the phone and realized their friend's suspicion must have been true, that they were in fact twins. Scheckler recalls breaking down in tears when she met her twin sister for the first time. I saw Lori crossing the street, a big smile on her face. Then we hugged, it was quite an experience. I felt less alone. Being an adopted child, I always felt different. I felt like, wow, I have a comrade there. I mean, that's got to be crazy. So a government experiment decided just to see what happens when you split up twins. Now, if the original story is true, people of similar DNA, regardless of relation, they share not only similar physical characteristics, but also lifestyle characteristics. Like they like to go to the same gym. They all like to watch Van Damme movies, all that kind of stuff. I wonder if these girls like to watch Van Damme movies. So
who doesn't really? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what emerged a few years later is that both these girls were part of a controversial study. In the 1960s, a then well-respected adoption agency, Lewis Wise Services in New York, deliberately split up at least 10 sets of infant twins or triplets and placed them in separate families. Scheckler and Pretzel were among the 6 sets of newborn identical multiples separated between 1960 and 1969, including 1 set of triplets. The agency had partnered with a group of psychiatrists and psychologists in an attempt to tease out what makes us who we are. They wanted to know much more about our identities and to find. They wanted to find out much more about our identities and if they are defined by our nature or nurture, and at what cost. For a BBC documentary about this study, I spoke to both twins and fraternal twin participants, blah, 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 blah. So I thought the more interesting thing was this was an approved study and that they didn't see any kind of weird consequence of this at all. And I'm trying to see if they learned anything from this research. This seems like something they would do in China. Like, I guess we do that kind of stuff here all the time.
Well, yeah, they do that stuff. I think about the Tuskegee experiment and the MK Ultra with like the hookers. You remember all this stuff?
Oh, I know about all the malicious shit that the government has done, like MK Ultra, all the radiation experiments, the Tuskegee. I know all about this.
They talked about nuking the moon just to, for shits
just for fun.
And giggles.
Yeah, I don't want to believe it. And then I started reading this, like, oh yeah, we not that long ago still doing fucked up shit, and we continue to do fucked up shit.
There were articles about like maybe we should put lithium in the water. Remember, it was famously on Vox, and then there was I can't remember.
They just want people to relax.
That's just chill, relax. Y'all. There was I can't remember. I think it was a European country was talking about adding like COVID vaccine material to the water supply, some shit like this. I mean, it's just nuts. These people are nuts.
So the researchers went on to say that one of the researchers, he remembers being surprised at just how similar the estranged twins were, not just in physical appearance, but their whole personality. It was quite clear to me the genetic influences were very strong. One young twin pair, for instance, both loved ketchup, to the delight of one adopted mother and the frustration of another. I guess we have an anti-ketchup family out there adopting kids. So, okay, the twins were placed with carefully selected families based upon several key factors, such as the parents' ages, socioeconomic status, education, religion, and their other children. They all had older siblings who had been adopted from Louise Wise Adoption Agency, and that was kind of the hook that they had in terms of getting parents to agree. The study soon ran into issues, funding ran out, and there were ethical concerns in the 1970s regarding informed consent. Parents were respectively asked to sign consent forms, but some refused. So obviously that didn't work out for them. The study did not include fraternal twins who just one looks good, one looks ugly. Let's see, how do they wind this up? This is quite a lengthy article from the BBC.
All this.
Yeah, I mean that was basically the gist of it.
This is like a recipe where you just wanted to learn how to fucking make a pork chop, and it's like a goddamn novel.
Just real quick. So the triplets involved in the study struggled with mental health problems for years after their discovery, though they had psychiatric problems as teenagers, and one of them committed suicide. It's believed that their biological mother had a history of mental illness. Okay, wow.
That would have been good to know.
Up front, absolutely. Man. So crazy stuff with doppelgangers, clones, twins, and weird experiments just to figure out what makes us tick. And to parallel back to the beginning before I started all this with COVID and vaccines, what Dr. Lee Merritt was suggesting in her talk with Alex Jones is that they want to control you and find out what makes you tick through the vaccine. Basically creating biological robots.
No, well, okay, that's a possibility, but I still think it's a bioweapon. Literally, like you changed your DNA, and then you become the cold, right? You're gonna be wiped out. You're gonna be the
manufacturer of it. Like are you saying like it changes your DNA, and you're just basically like a factory for creating?
No,
viruses?
You become called. Whatever they do.
Oh, okay.
There will be some sort of, I don't know how you would make this happen, but
like another key.
It comes down from the chemtrails, but like if you have the certain DNA, it'll
they just introduce like a different catalyst, and that does it.
Yeah, it's a catalyst that knows this particular DNA modification, which we know now it does.
It does. I mean, I think that's been admitted to and been proved that it does impact your DNA in significant ways. So, all right. That's what I got on clones, doppelgangers. Let's get on out of here.
Be a part of the magic. Give us an email at ourbigdumbmouth@gmail.com. Check out obdmpod.com for all the social media and donation links.